Good evening, everyone. It's been a little while, a little over 2 weeks by my count, but we are back with a new episode of Sports Guru. In tonight's stream, I'm going to discuss what's going on as of this present moment with the New York Yankees, what they've done over the offseason, what they could do to continue to improve their roster to put themselves over the top and into championship contender territory, and where they presently stand as of the moment. So, to start off with, for those who do not recall, the Yankees had their worst season since 1993 this past year. They spent most of the season fighting to stay out of last place in their division. They fell below 500 in August and spent a good chunk of the season there, getting there, actually, I believe near the end of July, and much of August they were below 500, and only climbing back out after a late season hot streak that ultimately had no bearing on their standings, but to simply pad their record and make things look a little less disastrous than they were. For those who do not recall, their offense was among the worst in the majors in every conceivable metric. Aaron Judge and Gleyber Torres were the only batters to post a batting average above 245. The Yankees were near last in the majors in hits, doubles, and runs scored. They were among the most strikeout-prone teams in baseball. And they did not get on base at a high rate either. They posted a sub 300 on base percentage in center field when Aaron Judge did not play there, in right field when Aaron Judge did not play there, at catcher, and at shortstop, as well as at designated hitter for much of the year, all just off the top of my head. First baseman Anthony Rizzo suffered a concussion about 55, 60 games into the season. He crashed into Fernando Tatis Jr., trying to tag him out at first base, and immediately went into the tank. Rizzo simply could not swing a baseball bat and could barely field the ball competently. And he spent about 2 months playing before the team even realized that he was not right neurologically, which led to them shutting him down for the year. On the pitching side of things, it was bad to say the least as well. Garrett Cole, who won the Cy Young Award, was the only pitcher in the starting rotation to log at least 10 starts and post an ERA below 4.22 on the season. On the other hand, multiple starters post an ERA north of 6. Most notably, Luis Severino and their high-priced free agent signing of Carlos Rodon, neither of whom were available for most of the year. Nestor Cortez, the surprise of last year's rotation, who led the team in ERA among starting pitchers, threw for a grand total of, I believe, 61 innings. So, once again, the Yankees were looking at a major injury problem on their roster. Their strength and conditioning staff, as is the case most seasons, seems to leave a lot to be desired regardless of who is actually on that staff. This was, I believe, their third strength and conditioning staff in the last 6 years, and the problem seems to persist regardless. Maybe they just have a knack for bringing in injury-prone players. Either way, they had a lot of names on the roster they could not rely on, both in the pitching staff and in the batting order. They brought back Josh Donaldson, and he was old, injury prone, and in rapid decline when they got him. All of these things aged rapidly as he got there, and they only got worse. The Yankees finally cut bait with him in the summer. Harrison Bader, the outfielder they traded away Jordan Montgomery for, was cut shortly after the trade deadline. I don't feel like much needs to be said there. Their catcher position, Jose Trevino, went into the year with a wrist injury that he tried to play through, was utterly useless in the batter's box, and eventually they shut him down for the year. Austin Wells finally came in, and there might be some promise there, but it's too early to tell. Anthony Volpe played the whole year at shortstop. He provided a lot defensively and a lot on the base paths, but we're talking about someone who posted an on-base percentage below 290 and a batting average below 210. The physical talent might be there, but I would still wait to issue much praise for his work as a hitter. That's someone who has a long way to go. The other prospect they brought up late in the year was center fielder Jason Dominguez to play after they finally gave up on Aaron Hicks as well, and realized that playing Isaiah Keener-Falefa in the outfield was a waste of everyone's time. He showcased a lot of promise, and then a week later, he was diagnosed with a torn UCL and needed Tommy John surgery, which marked him out not only for the rest of the season, but for a good chunk of the 2024 season as well. So that generally leaves us in a bad place for 2024 going into the offseason. But then they made a few moves. They swung a trade for Juan Soto of the Padres. They gave up not a particularly large haul. The key piece of the trade package was pitcher Michael King, who they alternated between the starting rotation and the bullpen. A good player, but if he's the best you're giving up in a package for Soto, you're in good order. Soto's been among the best left-handed pitchers and hitters in Major League history up through as many plate appearances as he's taken. It goes without saying that he's a major improvement from where they were in the corner outfield spot the last few years when Aaron Judge is not there. They traded for Alex Verdugo with the Red Sox. I'm personally not crazy about him as a player, but his batting average is respectable, and it beats playing an infielder in the outfield. And the other big move they've made to this point was signing starting pitcher Marcus Stroman away from the Chicago Cubs on a 2-year contract. He's 33. He's coming off a season where he made the All-Star game, had a spectacular first half, but was pretty beat up in the second half of the year. Pitched terribly when he was on the mound. Clearly not right. If he's healthy, this is a big addition. Stroman is not old the way Donaldson was and in rapid decline. So he's a guy who could bring plenty of fire, plenty of attitude that the roster, quite frankly, needs. It would be a shot in the arm. But he's a bit of a combustible personality, so the possibility of this blowing up always does loom in the background. Still, I don't hate that move. The Yankees needed someone who can pick up a spot in the starting rotation, you'd be insane to expect huge bounce back years from both Rodon and Cortez. You have to get another arm, which leads me into the next topic, which is what moves can they make that would put them over the top into contender status? Well, as we've gone over here, the Yankees have questions on offense at several positions. Until Dominguez is back, there are major questions about center field, so Aaron Judge will be playing there. But they don't want him long-term playing center field. And Dominguez is one of their highest prospects, so they want to see what they have in him. He's going to get his opportunity. The question is whether he can deliver. At first base, who knows right now? Asking anything from Anthony Rizzo when he's been in decline for about 4 years now with back problems and now coming off of a concussion is a major risk. As discussed earlier, there's the issue of shortstop. They did not get good offensive numbers out of the position last year, but with Anthony Volpe going into his second season, as we all know, it's going to be his job to lose. I don't hate that decision either. Which also leaves the final position where I believe there's a question mark, and that is third base. DJ LeMahieu has been injured in and out of the lineup for the last 3 years. His offensive numbers have been very underwhelming, but he plays excellent defensively on the hot corner. So I expect that for much of the year, he's going to be there. It's just a question of whether he can get his hitting numbers back to where they were a couple seasons ago, which would do wonders for the rotation. The Yankees for years have lacked guys who hit for a high batting average and don't strike out too much. What he was in 2019 and 2020 was exactly what their lineup needed. A high contact, low strikeout guy who doesn't worry about chasing the short porch in right field and who's willing to hit the ball all over the field. Designated hitter is not worth discussing, really. Stanton is locked in there. You can't ask him to play the field with his lack of speed, so that's the only spot you can play him. And with what he's making, they're not going to have him sit on the bench. So what moves can they make to improve? Offensively, Cody Bellinger is a free agent. He had a couple of terrible years in a row, but if you look at his profile last year, what he did as a hitter is exactly what the Yankees need. A high batting average, not a ton of strikeouts. With 2 strikes in the count, he choked up on the bat, and he generally chased base hits instead of going for the home run ball. He could play center field. He can play first base. He's a lefty, which continues to further balance the lineup, which is still a bit short on lefties. Right now, they'd be looking at potentially Austin Wells, Alex Verdugo, and Juan Soto and Anthony Rizzo, but I don't expect to see all of them in the lineup at the same time. And then, of course, there's, the Martian when he comes back from Tommy John surgery, which is going to be sometime in the middle of the summer, if not later, toward the end of the summer. As of the moment, Bellinger has been on the market since the end of the regular season. No one seems to be making any sort of substantial offer, and I believe this would actually be beneficial to the Yankees despite the risks, because simply they need guys who can hit. The last few years, they have been stacked from top to bottom with guys who have no business being in a major league batting order. This is a guy who could protect the back end of the order if you hit him 5th or 6th. I don't think that there's any other major moves to make for the offense. I don't see any catcher or third baseman on the market. He's far and away the biggest difference maker that the Yankees could get, though adding Giovanni Urshela, if he's fully recovered from his hip injury, would be nice depth to have at third base as well. As for the pitching staff, Stroman threw 150 innings last year. Cortez threw for 61. Rodon made, I want to say, maybe a dozen starts, and he was atrocious in all of them. I don't think he was healthy in any of them. If he's healthy, that's great. But to ask him to consistently be what he was during his last 2 seasons before joining the Yankees is a major, major ask. If he can get on the field for 25 to 30 starts and keep his ERA below 370, that would be considered a win in my book. If he can consistently get his fastball above 97, then I think he'd be in good shape to go. But last year, he consistently had his fastball in the low to mid 90s, and he seemed to be pressing on the issue every time he took the mound. My expectation for him, though, is that he'll be healthy this season, relatively speaking. But you need one more pitcher. You didn't get many innings out of Cortez. You can't ask to get 200 innings out of 33-year-old Marcus Stroman. And you don't want to put all that pressure on Cole again. You can't expect him, even if he's your ace, to be as good as he was last year because, well, I mean, look how good he was last year. It's even by his standards, he was unbelievable. You need another guy who can eat innings. We've seen for most of the last 20 years now what happens when the team goes into October with an overworked bullpen because their starters couldn't carry the load from an innings standpoint during the year. Zach Britton said it himself after 2019 in the post-game interview after Game 6 against the Astros. Year in and year out, too much is being asked of the pen, and they simply run out of gas by the postseason. You have to get another pitcher. And there are 2 guys on the market that would be exactly what the Yankees need. One of them is Blake Snell, a free agent from the Padres. He's a former Cy Young winner, but he's not a guy who throws heavy innings, and he's going to command a massive annual salary. But he would obviously be a great addition. He's got familiarity with Juan Soto from their time as teammates, and I believe that would be a valid possible reason for him to come here. I think that Soto could help talk him into it if the Yankees go that route. The other addition, and the move that I believe they need to make, is bringing back Jordan Montgomery. He's not a number 1, but he does not need to be. He would be your ideal number 3. He's an innings eater, which is precisely what they need. He posted a 3.14 ERA over his last 43 regular season starts, which actually, when you go by the numbers, is ace numbers. His win-loss record is a bit misleading. He wasn't always great when the Yankees scored runs, but he also got the worst run support in the majors. At one point during his last 2 seasons with the team, he went 5 consecutive starts without the team scoring a single run for him while he was on the mound. So I wouldn't look too much into his win-loss record. He consistently delivered over the last 2 years with the Cardinals and the Rangers, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. He's a guy who draws a lot of ground balls. He's a lefty pitching in a stadium that's not so friendly to pitching, but is less hostile to lefty pitching than it is to righty pitching. And he's not old either. And as we obviously can say, he has plenty of experience playing in this stadium and in front of this crowd, it's not something that's going to rattle him the way it would some guys like Sonny Gray, for example. Those two moves, signing Bellinger to add to the batting order and adding either Snell or Montgomery. My preference is Montgomery because I believe they'll get more innings out of him. I believe that's what the Yankees need to make to push themselves over the top into championship contender status. As they're presently constructed, if Wells, if Volpe, and if Dominguez all pan out from a batting standpoint, and if we get solid bounce back years from both Rodon and Cortez, the roster as constructed, in my assessment, is 90-win territory, also provided that Aaron Judge stays healthy. Good season, but probably not enough to win the division with what the Baltimore Orioles have going on for them and with how the Tampa Bay Rays always seem to be in the mix of things no matter what their roster looks like. So they need a little bit more. One more starter who could give you 180 innings on the season. One more batter who could give you 25 doubles, 25 homers, and a batting average north of 275, 280, with an on-base percentage north of 355. I believe both of those two moves would push this roster above 95-win territory and could creep toward 100. That would be contender territory. One can only hope, but I don't believe the Yankees are definitively done just yet. I think they know they have to make one more move, especially with Soto being in an arbitration year and hitting free agency next season. I think they know that their window to do anything is not going to be open much longer between that and the age of Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge, who are getting into their 30s. I think there's enough pressure. I think there was enough, I don't know that I would say fear, but I think that there was enough understanding on the ownership standpoint that if the team continues to just sit idle and not do anything to get better when they're clearly not good enough, that the stadium could look like it did in late August and into September last year, with primarily empty seats, which is not something that we're accustomed to seeing. And I believe that would be enough to push things over the top from a fan hostility standpoint if apathy from ownership were to once again rear its ugly head. So that is my final prediction on the season. I believe they add one of those two who needs one more batter or one more pitcher. I would be surprised if they get both, though I can hope. But until I'm proven wrong, I would not expect such moves from the current front office and from the current ownership group. But I will remain hopeful. Thanks for taking the time to watch or listen. Take your time to subscribe to the page. Click the bell for alerts. This has been the Sports Guru signing off. I will see you all next time, and have a good night.